Well, Michael Bociurkiw is a global affairs analyst and former spokesperson for the Osce special monitoring mission to Ukraine. He joins us live from Lviv by Skype. Hi there, Michael. Thanks very much for being with us. Michael, we're hearing that there's going to be a ceasefire from Mariupol with the hope of opening up one of these humanitarian corridors. But we've been here before, haven't we, with this sort of announcement?
Well, we sure have. And I have to say that after the promises made yesterday by the Russian side and that they weren't honored, for example, the reduction in firing on Kyiv and Chernihiv, we're in a very, very bad place as humanity because, there have been times in history where, for example, the rebels in Colombia have honored promises to put their arms down and allow, for example, vaccinations. There have been times, for example, in Myanmar where humanitarian agencies have been able to go in and do stuff because those promises have some currency. Where we are right now in Ukraine is that the Russian promises have no validity whatsoever because they've been violated so many times. So anyone from, say, the Red Cross or the Ukrainian government or anyone else operating here has a very difficult time planning any type of intervention, evacuation, humanitarian delivery because promises cannot be believed from the Russian side.
And Michael, I'm wondering, how can Russia successfully focus on the Donbass region? That's what it's saying, that it wants to refocus its efforts, in the words of the Russians. But if it's then fighting off Ukrainian counterattacks elsewhere, how is it going to make that move to refocus?
Well, they've been in the Donbass, as you know, since 2014. And I know from being there myself, in fact, behind enemy lines, is that they've kitted out quite nicely in the sense that they have the latest jamming equipment. They're, in terms of weaponry, they're very well equipped. So it doesn't take much for the Russians to kind of expand their footprint from occupied areas of Donetsk and Luhansk to seize more territory. And when they're operating in joint cooperation with the Russian forces, that makes them even more potent. And then, of course, the other kind of front line is that southern area linking Russia with Crimea. They seem to have control over that, and they're going to do, believe me, everything they can to hold on to that, including pummeling Mariupol even further.
Michael, in the beginning, we heard a lot from Moscow about regime change being necessary in Ukraine. But is the move now away from regime change and more towards these territorial goals with a view to a settlement in the future?
I think territorial goals, but also I think they're going to try and put Mr. Zelensky in a very difficult position. For example, trying to get him to capitulate, things like shelving that ambitions to join NATO, possibly even the EU, despite they said that's okay. I think when it comes to putting aside the EU membership, that is something that will not bring Ukrainians out onto the streets. But when you demand things like calling Crimea Russian territory for perpetuity or the Donbass, that will be something that will get Ukrainians out onto the streets in big numbers. He's in a very, very tight spot right now. I don't envy him, but he's going to have to navigate this very carefully and quickly. I think his way to do that is to have very widespread consultations with opposing parties in parliament, that sort of thing, to know how much space he has to negotiate.
Michael Bociurkiw there, global affairs analyst and former spokesperson for the OSCE in Ukraine. Michael, thank you.
My pleasure.
The UN's refugee agency says the number of people leaving Ukraine has reached a new milestone. UNHCR Commissioner Filippo Grandi has been in Lviv looking at how to increase support for refugees.
Today we reached 4 million refugees from Ukraine, but I observed also at the border with Poland, it's not like before now. Fewer people at this moment are going out of the country.
Well, most of the 4